And a very happy Thursday to you at 12:08 in the West. It's the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
John, State Senator Scott Wiener is trying to get SB 79 over the finish line and get signed into law by Gavin Newsom. That would change the zoning for any single-family home to be a 7-story apartment building anywhere near a transit hub, anywhere in the state of California. Let's check in on one of those transit hubs in North Hollywood.
A Metro bus ride turned bloody and with passengers on board. Someone was stabbed multiple times in the neck.
Oh.
Who doesn't want those murder buses coming to their neighborhood? 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. The big news today is that according to the federal government, Southern California Edison is responsible for igniting the deadly Eaton Fire. That is the fire that wiped out portions of, well, I guess the San Gabriel Valley. That would be, next to Pasadena there.
Yes, Altadena was almost completely wiped out, parts of Pasadena, and just as devastating as the Palisades. Probably doesn't get as much attention. But there's probably a lot of lawyers today who are like, we told you.
And this is probably, politically speaking, the best case scenario for Gavin Newsom. If it was a homeless encampment, that would be a problem for him. If it was an arsonist that he and his buddies let out of prison early, that would be a problem for him. But outside of a lightning strike, this is probably Gavin Newsom's most preferred outcome. However, it shouldn't be. Because think about this for a second. Southern California Edison is a public utility. Is it a company that you can buy stock in? Yes. However, it is in such a heavily regulated industry that it is a quasi-public institution because most industries don't have boards that regulate everything that they do. If you go out and start a bakery, there's not a bakery commission that's breathing down your neck. But if you're a utility company, you're regulated by the California Public Utility Commission, and they have a say in almost everything you do. And the people who sit on that commission are appointed by the governor and others in public office. The governor has the strongest voice on that commission. And that commission is supposed to make sure that the public utilities don't price gouge, that they are operating in a safe manner, that they are not doing illegal things to screw consumers, that they are operating in a way that is consistent with the state's attitude towards the environment, things like that. And Southern California Edison, and for that matter, PG&E and other public utilities in the state of California, have had equipment that they know is bad. They know needs to be replaced. They know could potentially start a fire. And what these companies have done is they've determined in certain cases that it would be cheaper to pay out in a lawsuit if there was a massive fire than to fix their equipment. And from the point of view of a company, that may or may not make sense. I don't know. I've never seen their books. I don't know how they make their decisions. But if the number is X to fix the equipment and the number is Y to pay out in a lawsuit, and X is greater than Y, then I can understand why a company that is supposed to make profits picks Y.
Well, not only that, but you look at what just happened with the settlement with the Woolsey fire, which is another devastating fire that Cal Edison started in the Malibu area a few years ago. They got approval from the CPUC to recoup all the costs of paying out all those settlements to ratepayers.
And if you're the California Public Utilities Commission, you're supposed to look at this and say, okay, well, it may be more financially advantageous for you to let the town burn down and to just pay everyone out in a lawsuit. We're here to stand up for the ratepayers. We're here to stand up for the homeowners. We're here to stand up for the people of California, and we're not going to allow you to do that. And we're going to force you to fix your equipment. We're going to force you to make sure you can safely deliver electricity to your customers. Because if you don't, the problems that will result from that are catastrophic. You're dealing with the loss of life. You're dealing with animals being burned alive. You're dealing with the loss of homes, of structures, of trees, of wildlife, everything. You can't allow that to happen. So the regulators are supposed to step in and say, I don't care if this is going to cost you money. You need to figure out how to do it. Think about other government regulators and whether or not they give you a break if they require you to do something that's going to cost you a fortune. We just spoke to people in the private sector who said that the government stepped in recently and told them that they have to get rid of trucks that are older than a certain amount of time. I think it was 2010. Any truck that was built before 2010 can no longer be used because those trucks do not meet the state's environmental standards. Okay, that may be a stupid regulation, and I believe that it is, but if you claim financial hardship, the state's not going to do anything for you. You think for 1 second Sacramento is going to hear from some business owner and go, oh, that's going to cost you money? Okay, well, don't worry about following that one. They would never do that in a million years. But that's what they do with the public utilities. That's what they do. The Public Utilities Commission in California does not exist to protect you, the ratepayer. They exist to protect the utilities. That's why they're there. And if Gavin Newsom had a problem with the performance of the Public Utility Commission and the commissioners, he could call on them to resign at any time. He could say, I made a big mistake appointing person X to this commission. They have not voted for the people of California. They have voted for the public utilities, and as a result, people died.
This is the same CPUC that decided that SoCal Edison and PG&E weren't making enough money off the free energy they were getting from solar owners.
Have you ever seen the movie All the King's Men or read the book All the King's Men?
I have not.
It is a great political novel. If any of you are going on vacation, although summer's officially come to an end, you got a long plane trip, whatever, you're looking for something to watch on Netflix, and you like politics, it's a decent story, whether in the book form or the movie form. And the plot line essentially goes something like this. It's about a fictional character who is Huey Long, who was the larger-than-life politician in the state of Louisiana, who probably would have become president instead of FDR had he not been assassinated. A very popular populist, a left-wing populist back when they had them. And it chronicles his life. And he started out in politics running for some low-level office in Louisiana, county commission, something like that. And he ran on the platform of saying no to a contract, a construction contract in this small town in Louisiana to a construction company that was politically connected but did shoddy work because the county wanted to give them the contract to build the school. And he knew that the company would produce horrible work and the building would not be safe and the taxpayers would not get the best bang for their buck. So that was the issue in the race. That was the platform that he ran on. And he lost because the machines supported the other candidate and not him. And he got stomped all over in the election. And then after the election, they approved the contract. The school was built. The construction was so bad, there was a fire at the school, and all of the children and the teachers burned alive at the school. And he was vindicated. And he used that issue to run for office for governor, not county commission, for governor of Louisiana. And he became such a sage and such a clairvoyant sort of figure that it was good enough for the people of Louisiana to say, okay, this guy sees something that we don't. And he was right and we were wrong and we made the wrong choice in the election. Let's reward this guy by electing him to high office. And then, boom, his political career was off to the races. In this particular case, we've been screaming about this for years. Everyone knows that these utilities have bad equipment and that they're not fixing them, including Gavin Newsom. But Gavin Newsom and the CPUC refuses to force them to fix it. They just won't do it.
In fact, you look at what happened in the result of the Camp Fire that destroyed the town of Paradise in Northern California, where part of the settlement with PG&E was, okay, they're going to start undergrounding power lines. Well, then they asked for 6 rate hikes in a single year, jacked up everybody's prices. People started complaining and freaking out. And what does Gavin do? Signs an executive order saying, okay, maybe PG&E does not need to underground those power lines.
He lets them off the hook time and time and time again. And even when they're forced to pay out in a lawsuit, remember what PG&E did? They paid fire victims in company stock. A company, by the way, that went bankrupt and had to be bailed out by you, the taxpayers. And now it's Southern California Edison's turn, where according to the feds, they're the ones that started that fire, and they're the ones who are responsible for all of the damage. And you look at that and you say to yourself, okay, so that's what happened, according to the feds. What does this mean for us? Well, it means if you're a customer of Southern California Edison, your bills are about to explode. Because the company doesn't pay out on these lawsuits. What the company does is they jack up your rates as the customers, and you pay the lawsuits. There's no special hidden fund somewhere in the company's vaults where this lawsuit money is going to come from. They're going to raise your rates as much as they can. And you know whose job it is to determine whether or not their rate increases are proper? The California Public Utilities Commission. The same commission that allowed them to continue to use knowingly faulty equipment. They're the ones that they're going to have to go to. What do you think they're going to say? And what's Gavin Newsom doing? Instead of having a press conference outside the California Public Utility Commission building demanding their resignations, he's an online troll. That's what he's spending his time doing. So, okay, so your utility rates are going to explode. Guess what else is going to happen? Your insurance rates are going to explode too. Because now it's been determined by the federal government that there's faulty equipment all over the place in California, and the state won't make them fix it. So if the game of insurance is a game of risk, and their job is to determine what the actual risk is to insure your home, that risk just exploded too. And they have definitive, irrefutable proof that that is true. As much as we dump on Ricardo Lara, how can you say no to a rate increase now? If you're State Farm and you go in front of the California Department of Insurance at an administrative hearing and you say, our risk just quadrupled because there's faulty equipment all over, none of it's being fixed, and no one's forcing them to fix it, the risk is through the roof. How can you say no to them? The source they're citing is the federal government. That's who they're going to cite. It's not some economist that works for them. It's not some think tank that takes their money. It's not some quack professor who has a boutique idea. They will be citing the government of the United States as their source. How can you say no to them at that point? And the answer is you can't. So your utility rates are going to go through the roof. Your insurance rates are going to go through the roof. And a lot of you are going to be dropped from your policies altogether, particularly in areas where we know the equipment is faulty and we know the fire risk is high. All of this was preventable. And had Gavin Newsom had 1% interest in doing his job, he could have done something about this. We talk about Gavin Newsom running for president and being interested in trolling Donald Trump and being interested in going on all the podcasts and the national shows and weighing in on federal issues and how he neglects his job as governor of California. And for the most part, if he's not interested in what we're doing, we benefit because all he would do is screw it up. But when he doesn't do his day job, this is also what happens. No one is minding the store. We have absentee landlords in charge. We have people who fundamentally do not care and are perfectly willing to allow you to burn alive if that will help them move up to the next office. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Gavin Newsom is a sociopath. He's a sociopath who doesn't care if you live or die. And he doesn't care if your home burns down, your church burns down, your grocery store burns down, your office burns down, whatever. He doesn't care. And if it does happen and you complain about it, then you're the problem. And then he's going to run you over. That's his attitude about all of this. So it's not going to get better as long as he's in charge. And it's not going to get better until someone, whoever that may be, has an interest in doing the job. So just keep today in mind when we have a debate in the race for governor, and all they want to do is talk about Donald Trump, and no one has any ideas about what to do to regulate the utilities or to figure out how to solve the insurance crisis. These are problems that the governor is supposed to tackle, and these are problems that Gavin Newsom could care less about. And that's why we are where we are. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. If you want to weigh in on the federal government saying that Southern California Edison and Gavin Newsom, who is supposed to regulate Southern California Edison, responsible for the Eaton Fire. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you missed yesterday's show or a show from last week and you want to find out what you missed out on, that's easy to do.
You know, we expect you to listen to 15 hours a week of this. Oh, God, that would make you crazy. Don't listen to 15 hours a week of this. Oh, maybe. Search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show. Hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. That's a lot of us. I couldn't handle me for 15 hours a week.
All right, let's go to the phones and welcome Freedom from Avalon. Freedom, hello.
Yes, sir. I could handle 15 hours of you guys. I think you guys are great, and your excerpts are just awesome as well. I just crack up all the time when I listen to you guys. It's great. And I also learn a lot because you have the most educated listeners, and people are on point. So what I'm calling is that I had some experience with Edison because I'm a former city councilman in the city I live in. And I served from 2014 to 2018, although I wasn't previewed and too inclined to know too much about the fires, but I do know that Edison, when they destroy public utilities or they're responsible or negligent, they try to get out of it, and they will do it any way they can. Now, in our case, one of the big stakeholders on Catalina dried up one of the water wells. Edison was negligent. The Catalina Island Conservancy's mission statement is to keep Catalina in its natural state in perpetuity, and they kind of balked on their mission as well. There's supposed to be several oversights there, as well as the public utilities, which I know in 2018, Michael Peavy, I believe it was Michael Peavy, resigned with 4 other public utilities commissioners because of corruption, okay? That's a fact. And that's when we were trying to grill them about being fair and balanced about the way they weigh in on public utilities issues when it comes from a public municipality like the city of Avalon, which is where I served. So I'm just letting you know they're going to do all they can to get out of being responsible for this. It's the nature of the beast.
So let me get this straight. When all was said and done, they were found to be responsible for creating the damage in Avalon. So that was not in dispute. When it was all said and done, what's that?
Well, it was on Catalina Island.
Catalina Island, okay.
Yes. So basically, the ratepayers in California have had to suck this up because we're subsidized by the other ratepayers that balance our utilities on Catalina. So it's water, electricity, and gas as well. So basically, people didn't even know it in California, but you guys were all charged for what happened, for the damage that was done on Catalina by one of the stakeholders, the landholders that dried it up. But Edison they were responsible for it. They're the ones who are supposed to oversee these things so this damage doesn't happen, and they didn't. They were negligent. Absolutely.
You got the impression that they were negligent, they didn't learn their lesson, and they just passed on the cost to ratepayers.
Oh, no, I didn't get the impression. They were negligent. We proved that. But they wiggled out of it, and then they just I guess when it's only a couple. So what happened was a new well had to be drilled, and at all costs they started drilling until they found water in a different place close to that location. So they had to basically they ruined that well forever. So that's a natural resource that is destroyed in perpetuity forever. Okay, so now they got to drill a new one to provide that particular area. It's called Emerald Bay, because that's the bay that they dried up the well at. They had to drill new wells there, and that cost several $1 million, and that was just reflected onto the rest of the ratepayers in California. So they do this all the time. I mean, then they're going to try to do it with the fires as well. We wanted the stakeholder to pay for it, and we wanted Edison to pay for it out of their own pockets. And we went to the Public Utilities Commission, and they sided on Edison's side, even though we proved negligence. It's just flat out greed is what it was. They just tried to get too much water out of one well, and they dried it up. And I know a lot about this because I studied water very much in depth as I served, and so basically you have to buck the water, though, and it's hard to do. It's hard to stand up to these huge companies, Edison, huge stakeholders, people who own the land, but you have to do it. And I don't see enough people doing it. I called yesterday and I said that's kind of the key is getting elected and being the dissenting voice, because even if you're one dissenting voice in a group of four, you can still make a huge difference. I know I did in 4 years. I got us after that point there, I got us a desalination unit, and we also were able to get a new food store that's a $35 million store from Vaughn's. I had them build one of those stores here, that was free to the taxpayers. Plus, I got the surrounding homes and businesses new doors and windows before the project even started to mitigate some of the dust and some of the noise pollution that was going to take place. I was still
all right. Well, it sounds like it's time for a weekend cruise to Catalina.
Hey, it's a beautiful place. It's very peaceful here, and everybody's welcome. You know what? We still have a lot of people coming over, and it's a lovely place. Very peaceful and beautiful. So please do. Thanks a lot. You guys
all right.
rock, and I just love your show. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it. When's the last time you've been to Catalina, Randy?
I've never been.
Never been, huh?
I need to go.
I've been once, and it was on a cruise ship, and I need to go back. It was a lot of fun. Let's go to Dan in Sonoma. Dan, hello.
John, there's a couple. I'm very skeptical, first of all, that SoCal Edison is responsible for this fire, and I say this for this reason. I remember the fires here in Sonoma and Napa back in 2017, and what happened at that moment was that the very morning of the fire, we turned on the TV about 5 in the morning, and what did I hear from the media, especially Channel 2, the local KTVU news network? They said it was probably PG&E. I was outraged when they said that because they mentioned that without a shred of proof. And because the rest of the media chimed in, ambulance-chasing lawyers came from across the country to Sonoma County and pilfered as much money as possible. later on, I became a reporter for the local paper, the Sonoma Sun newspaper, and I just said, I'm going to look into this. And what I found was that PG&E was not responsible. SoCal's final report was a private entity caused that fire, but that didn't stop all those lawyers from pilfering again as much money as possible. And we, the ratepayers, are paying for this, and we're still paying for this to this day. And during my investigation, I tried to contact a lot of people, and as a little reporter, you'd be surprised how much power I had. Just writing articles for this one little paper, I could talk to senators, congressmen. I was in constant contact with PG&E and lawyers and so forth. The one entity that was arrogant as anything was the California Public Utilities Commission. When I called them, they wouldn't return any calls. They were arrogant. They don't have to talk to you, and they knew it. So that's an organization that needs to be dismantled in a big way. But there's one other thing that came up with that fire that I suggested in one of my articles, and that was arson. Now, I didn't want to go down the conspiracy road, but what Cal Fire had said didn't make any sense. They said the fire started in Santa Rosa. Well, I remember the winds coming from the northwest heading southeast, and they were going in one direction and one direction only. It didn't make any sense that the fire was 17 miles against the wind in Calistoga. So, again, there are a lot of unanswered questions here, but I blame Jerry Brown. He was the one who started this whole thing. He completely mishandled that fire. He didn't launch anything until maybe 3 days, but by then everything was already in flames. But I mention this whole thing because there's been fire after fire over the many years, and they keep blaming the same entities. It's either Cal Edison, PG&E, or some other entity that has money, and you can pilfer money through this. And that's what's going on here. It's a complete scam. It's an absolute complete scam. You don't have any evidence, and they keep moving forward.
Well, I don't know if there's no evidence because, Randy, if I recall correctly, not long after the fire started, there was video that was produced of what appeared to be the ignition point of the Eaton Fire.
Yes, and there was video of the tower sparking, and it sparked on what was supposed to be a dead power line that Cal Edison never removed, that was just sitting there, that may have reignited, which may have gotten the fire started. So there's video of this one, and that's going all the way back to several different angles from several different homeowners and surveillance video from a gas station. So even Cal Edison, in a regulatory filing a month after the fire, said, yeah, we probably started it.
Well, I'm not a fan of PG&E or Cal Edison. But I'm also not a fan of the CPUC. Any utility is regulated, including those two entities, by the California Public Utilities Commission. They can't say or do a thing without their approval. What is their responsibility? They're supposed to be overseeing these utilities, and they're not, and they take no blame whatsoever.
That is 100% true, and ultimately that's Gavin Newsom's fault because Gavin Newsom appoints to the CPUC, and he has influence over that board. If he wants to lean on them, or if he wants to only appoint commissioners who will pledge to make sure that these utilities follow the rules, he could do that. He chooses not to because he is checked out of all California issues right now. Thank you for the call. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Southern California Edison, according to the feds, is responsible for the Eaton Fire. Now it's your opportunity to weigh in at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Right now we're taking your calls at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. The federal government said that Southern California Edison is responsible for the Eaton Fire. Gavin Newsom's Public Utilities Commission, they're supposed to regulate Edison, and they failed to do that. What say you at 800-222-5222? Let's go to Robert in Hollywood. Robert, hello.
Oh, I don't have much time here. Yes, I'm listening to KBC here often. This problem, like most political issues, are of a philosophical nature, and I'll say this by saying this is PG&E is not a result of capitalism. This is a result of the government interfering in the economy and a coercive monopoly, which wouldn't happen. And I would like to see KBC invite more people from the Ayn Rand Institute think tank to clarify all
Thank you very much.
All right, let's go to Joe in Eastvale. Joe, hello.
I wasn't wasting our time with that.
No.
Good, I know. Okay, real quick. I don't want to politicize it like that last guy did. What a knucklehead. But the fact is, I worked up in that area. That's Battalion 4. I worked for the LA County Fire Department years ago. I started my career flying out of Camp 2 right by JPL at a Copter 15, 16, and 17. And we used to have what was called backfires at that time, where we would set control burns to eliminate these type of hazards. And it's just a damn shame that what's happened to these people up there. They're good, hardworking people, man. I drove by. It's just devastating. It brings tears to my eyes, And then I moved to the Bay when I retired, and I had to put up with that up there. But, you take that Paradise Fire, and it's the same company over and over again. And then you take the Palisades Fire, and it's the same company again. So my only question is, when are we going to stop politicizing and start convicting these
Can't say that.
Joe.
Because it's a crime for what they've done. If an arsonist did that, they'd go away. 89, they say 89, but there's more. Men, women, and children were burnt to death beyond recognition. Think about that in the Paradise Fire. Well on that. Put that in. Mail the pictures of those people's relatives and mail it to every politician in the state of California. That's what they should do, right?
And nobody went to prison for that. Nobody.
They were held criminally responsible for that.
But nobody went to prison.
Right.
Yeah, so what good is that? What good is that? What do we, come on. You and I do that something less. They throw the key away. That's all I got to say. And then to make matters worse, that vice president shows up there in the middle of, I had to call the Pope to bless the station, and I'm not even Catholic. She shows up there with a press conference at Station 12 on Lincoln Avenue, right? Because God forbid, when there's a microphone, God forbid she passes that up. And it's just the nerve of these people, these politics, at the highest level. It's at the highest level. That's the scary part. With that, gentlemen, I enjoy the show. I got to go.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. And you're right. What's the point of holding them criminally responsible if you don't correct the bad behavior? The point of the criminal court system is to take someone who's doing something that you don't want them to be doing, robbing a store, beating their wife, whatever, and saying, no, you can't do that anymore, and we're going to punish you, and from that punishment you'll learn to stop repeating that bad behavior. Well, if that's what we do to the guy that robs a 7-Eleven, why shouldn't we correct the bad behavior of PG&E and Southern California Edison too? Wouldn't that make sense? Let's go to Brad in Newport Beach. Brad, hello.
Yes. I'm just calling in to say, we call in and we complain, and it is terrible what Newsom's doing, and he's just basically running for president and leaving us in the dust. But I am calling in to say, just call in. I can give you the number for it. His complaint line. Worst case, you get a voicemail or a recording, and you can leave a message. And I do that once a week. Tell how he's just so corrupt and how he's just got his hands in China and all the money that he got from them. And I drive up the 5 all the way up to Northern California, and all the Bakersfield and all the farmers, they have stopped stealing our water. It just goes on and on. But you can call in. I also complained to radio stations or news stations that just flat out lie what they report. And I did that a lot on KNX during, a year ago or two, and just say, you guys are just, Trump, what do they call it? It's deranged syndrome. And I used to call in, they kind of knew me almost first name. But anyways, all you got to do is call in on some of these.
Well, here's my response to that. Don't call. Well, you can call them if you want to. Nothing is going to change until the state starts voting differently. Unless and until we start voting differently, this is what we're going to get. Because Newsom gets rewarded. Talk about correcting bad behavior. He's ignoring us. Until we vote someone in who sees the world differently than him, we're rewarding bad behavior. We've got 2 more hours coming up on The John Phillips Show.